The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing our savior, overcoming hurdles, achieving dreams. Together we can succeed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Paula Show. How will your early age pension affect you? This is what we're speaking about tonight with the director of the Antigua and Barbados Social Security, Mr. David Matthias. Recently, a friend called me. She's 60 years old, and she was just about to accept early age pension. But she was a little bit concerned that she would lose 12% on her pension payment. She, however, said, Paula, I'm not financially secure, so I need to get this money immediately. Would you make that decision? Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. We'll be right back. I promise you, it's going to be an awesome conversation with the director of the Antigua and Barbuda Social Security Board. He's already smiling. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay with us, please. Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show tonight. Remember to watch the Paula Show via CTV Channel 2 on Tuesday nights at 9 and Sundays there's a rebroadcast at 1 in the afternoon. The Paula Show inspires, entertains, and transforms behavior. Remember to like me on Facebook as well, The Paula Show. The director of the Antigua and Barbuda Social Security Board is here with us tonight. Mr. David Matthias, thank you for accepting our invitation once more.
Always happy to be here.
Very good. We're talking tonight about early age pension. However, I want to take you someplace first. I've been reading about age benefits, and I understand it's either a pension or a grant.
Yes, it is.
What's the difference, though?
Pension is a continuous cash payment, whereas a grant is a single lump sum payment that one receives.
And how often do you
pay grants?
I like that lump sum.
Well, to be quite honest, most persons would prefer to receive a pension because the pension, it is a periodic payment in cash and it continues until the day you die. Whereas the lump sum is a single payment that is received and is only a proportion of the amount of contribution you would have made. It would not exceed 75% of the contribution.
What qualifies you to get a grant as opposed to a pension?
You get the grant because you don't qualify for the pension. That's the
so you're
easiest way
just
to
giving
put
me
it.
a little thing to tide me
You're
over.
Correct. So you have been contributing all of your life, or all of your working life, with the hopes of receiving a benefit. However, you've fallen short. Having fallen short, it is the law says that we should return to you a portion of what is that you've put in, because you shouldn't be left destitute. So you get the grant.
Beginning 2017, our pension age started an incremental increase. So it's from 60 years, now it's 62 years.
Correct.
When it was 60 years, one would have to work 500 contribution weeks in order to qualify
for a pension.
Right. In 2019, at 62 years,
you have to work 600 weeks.
I'm seeing a correlation here. As the pension age increases, so is the requirement.
Correct.
For the
so come 2025, when the pension age is 65, the requirement would be 750 weeks, which equates to 15 years contribution.
You're asking more of us.
Yes.
Why don't you even sound forgiving?
Because it's just what has to happen. For me, it's pretty straightforward. I try to keep it as simple as I can. Think of Antigua and Barbuda in the context of the world, or even in the context of CARICOM. And if you look at it within CARICOM, when we were at 500 weeks contribution, we were actually on the lower end.
Okay.
So it meant that persons did qualify for a pension earlier. So as most of us move towards 65, which is to say 15 consecutive years in order to qualify for full benefit, then that is where we're moving to.
The strange thing, though, is the pension age is increasing according to Social Security. However, some employers are still fixed at 60.
Yes.
And they're actually forcing employees to leave the workplace at 60, and your pension age is 62 at this time. It seems as if you do not really like the word force.
You saw my grimace. No, I don't like the word force.
Okay, tell me what are your thoughts?
I do know that the relationship that exists between an employer and an employee is what informs when an employer says one should leave your place of work. Even at Social Security, it's a contract, a collective agreement that exists between Social Security, the board, and the employees of that entity. It says currently that you leave at 60. It means that Social Security, having changed, speaks to the need for a conversation to be had between an employee and an employer, that should the employee feel that they have the ability to continue working, the employer should demonstrate that level of flexibility. Thus, the word force suggests that
they're pushed out.
Yes. And if anything, and we would have seen what would have happened in the USVI, where Liat had to pay out $1.5 million.
So people ought to be careful.
Yeah, because our Constitution does not allow you to discriminate by virtue of age.
But since those business leaders pegged, in many cases, their retirement age or pension age to that of the Antigua and Barbados Social Security Board, wouldn't it therefore make sense to shift, because you're already shifting?
It should, and it does. I do know that at the level of the Labor Board, there's much discussion that is taking place where you have employer entities, whether it be the Chamber or the Employers Federation, are discussing what are the implications for business. Because as much as Social Security has taken this decision that for its own sustainability, the age has to move, equally, you have to recognize that an employer would be asking himself the question, is it safe, dependent on the type of work, for me to have a person who is significantly advanced in age continuing to work? It's very rare that you have a 65-year-old laborer working in construction. By the same token, you could have a 65-year-old grade mason or carpenter who is still working because the ability still remains.
So what is the person supposed to do if the pension age is 65, and especially since, like that, in my introduction, that individual who's not financially secure, what are you supposed to do?
In truth, the design for Social Security was to keep persons in active insured employment for as long as possible.
Right.
And the simple reason for that is as plain as the nose is on our faces. There's a particular segment of the population that continues to work and continues to contribute to Social Security. Regrettably, that is not always the youth, right? So it means that that core, those persons who are between 35 and 59, those are the ones who you see are working. When you look at the labor force and the labor market statistics, it's telling you that when you look at the percentage of men, 80% of men 60 and older, they're still working. And there's a reason why. Because they have families and they have entities that they need to maintain. Right? The reality is Social Security's pension alone is not sufficient to maintain life and limb in retirement. So at some point in time,
a lot from you.
at some point in time, consideration is going to have to be given by individuals as to how do we augment or build upon Social Security, because it is the foundation. How do you build upon it to secure your economic future when you're on fixed income? The reality, a lot of persons who are 60 and older retire, and at some point return to the world of work.
The pension age in Grenada is 60, and they've started a conversation to move to 65. Yes. There's lots of opposition.
Yes.
So it's not unique for opposition to exist when you're trying to move the pension age from one point to another.
To my mind, there's been only one country in the CARICOM that has had an easy transition with the age, and that
Which one is that?
That is Barbados.
Really?
Yes.
The pension age there is what, 67
it's
as
67,
of this
correct.
January 1st.
Correct. Right? And you have heard it move. It has been moving with little or no fanfare.
What about Dominica, 63 to 65? I didn't hear much about that.
No. And the reason why you didn't hear so much about Dominica is that Dominica embarked on a very unique approach, and an approach very much adopted by Antigua as well, which is a consultative approach, going to the persons repeatedly, utilizing media such as your show and others to get the message out there as to why it is necessary for Social Security to make that transition. At the end of the day, you really only need to say one thing. If Social Security is no longer there and it fails, what happens to society? And no one wants to chance that answer. Right.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that the pension age in Antigua and Barbuda will go beyond 65?
Yes, I do.
I tell you, he doesn't even sound forgiving that soon or later, the pension age in Antigua and Barbuda might be 80. I am preparing myself to work longer because I know it's going to happen.
It will.
Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Mr. Matthias, I asked you earlier about those employers who are willing to request that the older employees leave the organization. I notice you like the word request more so than you like force.
Yes.
Okay. What rights do employees have should they choose to remain?
Employees, the right that they have is the right to work, to decent work, and to receive their pay for having worked.
So if the employer is adamant that you should leave, I guess you have to leave?
Again, as I said, it's a relationship that exists between the employee and the employer. In most instances, there is a contract that exists. Perhaps it's not a unionized environment. If it's not a unionized environment, one would have to check to see what was the terms in which the employer said.
So you might not have any rights to stay?
No.
You might just have to leave
You
at
might.
60.
You might.
Pension is calculated on the best of 5 contribution years in the last 10 years of your employment. That's a troublesome issue for some persons. Let's say you have an employee who left a high-paying job at, let's say, age 48. Lots more years to work. And that person would have worked at an organization for 25 years. So you started working at 23, you're now 48. Salary, $8,000 per month. Now, at 48, you're about to start a new job that's paying $3,000 per month. But your pension is going to be calculated on the best of 5 years in those last 10 years, given that you have an additional 17 years to work before you can earn a pension. That is why some persons are choosing not to work. Yes, they're choosing not to pay contributions.
Why is that?
Because it's the best 5 of the last 10, and
Yes.
those were the years when you weren't earning a high income. You know this is happening.
I actually don't know that this is happening.
Oh, really? I'm
actually
telling
don't
you
know.
it's happening. So people are working and not paying contributions.
Okay. If a person is working and not paying contributions, we both know that those counted to the law.
I don't know that
So
it's
that's why I say
illegal.
I don't know that that is happening. But beyond
But
that,
it's possible.
beyond that, I am aware that there are persons whom, as they advance in age and they transition from one employer to another, that the rates of pay that they were earning in their early years is not the same in their latter years. In truth, that goes counter to the normal flow of the lifetime earnings. And I'm speaking purely as an economist now, not
Well,
as a
speak
director.
as a realist now, because I looked at
But-
your calculations for the, let me show you. I looked at your calculations.
You have
Yes,
my booklet.
yes, I have your booklet. I looked at your calculations,
Yes.
and these calculations are based on an assumption that as you grow older,
You earn
you
more.
earn more.
Correct.
But the world of work is changing, and
Mm-hmm.
that is no longer the case for maybe over 2 decades now. So when are you going to change? This is not representing what is happening now. Yes, Mr. Matthias, I read your booklet from back to front, from cover to cover.
I'm indeed happy that you did.
Thank
I'm
you.
indeed happy that you did. And
You agree with me, though?
I wouldn't say that I agree, but I don't wish to argue, right? I wish to elucidate, which is why we're here.
Okay.
Right? So let us look at what are the trends at work. For the most part, has the world of work in Antigua transformed to the point where what you have a person's earning, the majority of persons earn less at the latter years and more at the earlier years. Now, if you extended the average earnings, that is to say, when you're calculating the base on which the average earnings is made, and you extend it beyond, let's say you went for the best 10 of your last 10. So you're taking the last 10 years,
Yes.
right? Or you're taking an entire lifetime average. What should happen mathematically is if you realize the greater number of years you work, the smaller the median is going to be, which is the smaller the average is going to be. You follow?
I'm following you.
So the smaller number of years that you use at the higher rates of pay, which is why you go the best 5 of your last 10, right, means you should be giving a person a much more fair representation of what they earned and what they were truly dependent and living off of. You're talking about a situation where persons, which is very unusual, extremely unusual, especially in a labor market that is still very much dominated by the public sector, where the single largest employer is government, where persons work there for a lifetime.
I'm not necessarily speaking about the government labor force.
I know you're
I'm
speaking
speaking about private.
And in the private, what you would find is that in your earlier years is when you tend to move. What I am aware of, and it is something that I've discussed with my research and communications team, because it's something that says we need to do a lot more research in the labor market to see what is driving that trend, where you would have employers offering deals to employees, which is why I prefer request rather
As
than
opposed to force.
Right, where employers would offer employees significantly inducements, golden handshakes, which pays the person out at 60, at 61. The person may be reemployed and reemployed at lower rates where the person is already receiving a pension, they're receiving whatever that golden handshake was, and they're receiving a smaller amount by way of remuneration, which is at that point acting as a top-up. And I know persons are doing that to ensure that their economic position remains fairly stable and unchanged.
And they're paying Social Security contributions on the small amount that they're receiving?
Well, as long as they don't make an application to Social Security for their pension, they will be still eligible to pay contributions well up to the age 65. And in so doing, even if it's a smaller amount, it still amounts to a contribution which increases their chance of getting a higher percentage replaced to them.
Because at the end of the day, it's a number of contribution
Contributions.
weeks
That informs the
that
percentage
informs the
replaced.
percentage that.
They receive.
So the more contribution
As you
weeks
make,
that you have,
the higher the
the higher
percentage
the percentage.
you will get back.
Mr. Matthias, you have a lot of work to do, because you see, people are trying every which way to ensure that they earn after they would have left organizations, and sometimes you're missing out on some contributions. I'm telling you.
I could not sit here and tell you that I doubt that. I would never tell anyone that we know we're covering 100% of all persons who are employed in Antigua. But what we do know is that we have to get the message out there that you are hurting yourself rather than helping yourself. Social Security is often deemed as a tax, and it really is not. It is, in its simplest way of looking at it, it is mandatory savings for those who, under ordinary circumstances, would not save for themselves.
What happens if someone is working, not contributing to Social Security, and that person becomes ill? So you're 60, you've left the workforce, you don't qualify for a pension as yet. You continue to work, but you're not paying a contribution towards Social Security, and you become ill.
You can't recourse to Social Security, you're on your own.
So it makes sense to pay the contributions. So no matter what we do, the bottom line is we should pay the contributions. That will make you very happy, right? So we're going to the third segment in a moment, and we will begin to speak about early age pension. An individual at age 60 has two options. You either continue to work until you reach pension age, or you take an early age pension.
Correct.
The concern is if you take an early age pension, you lose.
Yes, you would lose. It is a reduced benefit because you have exited the system early.
And how much is that person going to lose if the person is 60 and the pension age is now 62?
It is 0.5% for each month's difference between the age that they exited and the normal age. In this instance, using your example, that would be 12%.
A whopping 12%.
Yes, it could be more.
Why could it be more?
As you know, the age is transitioning every other year.
Okay.
It moves up by 1 year. So say, for example, a person has turned 60 when the age is 63. It means that they will be losing
63 is 18.
18%.
Because my girlfriend, she works at a financial institution. She's 55 next year.
Yes.
And she has to leave because that's the policy of that institution. 55 is retirement age. If she chooses to accept early age pension, she has to be 60 to accept early age pension, right?
Correct.
So she has to wait an additional
5
5
years.
years. And if she accepts it at that time,
In 5 years' time, we're likely to be at age 65. 65.
right,
So she would have to be at a significant loss. It
About-
wouldn't make sense. She'd be losing her entire pension. She might as well continue working.
actually, she's going to lose 30%.
Which, as I said, is almost her entire pension.
So what is she supposed to do?
Continue working. She's 55.
She can't, she's not allowed to continue working at the institution.
Perhaps not at the institution, but alternately, she could find alternative employment. This is a problem that I know a lot of us face in Antigua, where we have certain ages that become ingrained in our psyche as this is the age that I should call it quits. The reality is that we're living longer. And because we're living long, it means that we're taking more from Social Security than we would ever put in to Social Security. So we need to continue. We need you at Social Security to continue working. The reason for the early pension, though it's deemed as a benefit, it also is there.
Is that a deterrent in some
It's
cases
mostly as a
too?
deterrent. It is there to, because you are losing,
Yes.
it will stop you or it will encourage you to continue working
Do
and to
you know
continue to
there's some
contribute.
persons who just cannot do without the pension? So even if they have to accept a reduced amount, they're going to take it anyway because they don't have an alternative.
Just last week, I spent quite a bit of my last week was spent trying to talk to persons about the decisions that we make when we reach that point of retirement. What exactly do we expect to happen at that point of retirement? I know for government employees, this is their aim and this is their focus. They have worked it out. We're going to get a pension from government. We're going to get a pension from Social Security. We're going to perhaps get a job, right? And that is going to be our fallback position. I know even the central bank, when it tried to embark upon pension reform, looked at this thing and it said, look, Social Security is not going to be sufficient. Now, imagine you're adjusting that which is already not sufficient, right? And the aim realistically has to be to create an environment where persons delay when they take a pension, because that's what it's about, delaying when they will take a pension so that they can contribute more. And in contributing more, have the
more.
It's ultimately the longer you contribute, the greater your contribution weeks, the greater your replacement.
So your recommendation would be to stay with the grind, stick it out for
Stay
as
for as long as you
possible.
possibly can. Stay at work.
Mr. Matthias, is it the only way? I mean, couldn't there be what some persons consider a more conscionable way? Couldn't the percentage be less? Couldn't it be 3%? Couldn't it be 4%? I'm just asking because
I am thinking of how to answer it, with a level of empathy and understanding.
yes, please.
And in truth, there is no other way to say other than no. And the reason why no, as unfeeling as no may be or may be perceived, is that understand and appreciate the reason that Social Security exists. It exists for persons to replace their income at a time when they shouldn't or wouldn't be expecting income, whether that be they're ill, they're invalid, or they're attained an age where work is no longer feasible. Because we're living longer, it has affected that generational transfer from one generation to the next. So today, we are working to take care of those who took care of us when we weren't working.
And we're hoping.
And we are hoping that our children will come and they will work to take care of us. Years ago, we had 6,000 pensioners. Today, we have 11,000, right? As that figure continues to grow, it means those are persons who are exiting the world of work.
Is Social Security sustainable then?
It is sustainable.
Yeah.
It is sustainable. And it is always sustainable if you're going to make the difficult decision to transition as your economy changes and as your labor market changes.
And increase the contributions if necessary.
It's not
the rate
the
of
change
contribution.
changing the rate is perfunctory. It is going to occur. The rate is going to change because you're going to be asking more from persons who are earning. Right? You are going to do that. The reality and the challenge, there are days that I sit and I say I don't envy the minister who is responsible for Social Security, who is also the Prime Minister, because he has a challenge. He talks about having an economic powerhouse. The reality is that we share his vision, because without that economic powerhouse, without that engine of economic growth, there will be no Social Security, because Social Security is one of those institutions that relies on value being created in an economy. And as I say to employers all the time, the true value in your business is not the building, it's not the equipment. It is those persons who come to work every single day, because from their output is where the value in your business is generated.
As an economist, Would you say that there's economic growth?
There is growth in
and
Antigua.
Barbuda?
There is growth in Antigua. Antigua has one perennial problem, and
What's
that's an
that?
issue of distribution of income. It is not evenly distributed, and thus the necessity for institutions such as Social Security, because it is a social transfer. It is
But
a
how can you make the change?
It begins with the employer. It begins with that employee-employer relationship where employers begin to
So
see.
your hands are tied?
Not that my hands are tied. I believe that if I engage stakeholder entities, if I engage the Employers Federation, the Chamber of Commerce, engage business people, engage the entrepreneur to let them recognize that the value that they're seeking to create, the wealth that they create, the wealth comes from the people who work for them. Think of it this way. As much as we dislike the concept of slavery, the reason why slavery worked as an economic system was that labor was free. And because labor was free, it meant that everything that was produced was almost at profit, because the only cost that you faced was the cost of getting the slave here and the cost of maintaining the plant. So we still have that mentality where the plant, the equipment, is where the value is. But in truth,
As opposed to the people.
if you did
So
not
you're
have
saying
that
we have a
guarantee,
slave mentality still?
we have a slave. I don't want to say slave mentality.
We have a slave mentality still because that's the example that you use. And it's okay to be truthful.
I always speak truth to power.
I'm going to leave you alone on that one. Thank you for staying with us on The Paula Show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. If given an opportunity, would you overhaul the entire Social Security system in Antigua?
The Social Security system does need to be overhauled. So it's not a matter of giving the opportunity, it's a matter of
When?
seizing the opportunity when it's available.
But you've been thinking about this for a while, it seems.
I have seized the opportunity.
Yeah?
Yes, but it's that members of the public don't like some of the the outcome of that opportunity.
Let's calculate early age pension given that an individual has 1,000 contribution weeks.
They have 1,000 contribution
Yes.
weeks, and they're taking an early pension, so they're retiring at 60. So in essence, you're going to take the first 500, which is going to give them 25% as a replacement. Then you're going to divide the remaining 500 by 50, which is going to give them an additional 10 years. So that 10 years now is going to give them, for each year, it's going to give them 1%. So that will be an additional, what?
Is it going to
10
be
years, so.
Is it going to be 500 weeks or 600 weeks?
It's 500 weeks.
600
Right.
weeks at 62.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I'm happy you asked that question. The 600 weeks at 62 relates to a full benefit. That is, a person who would have attained the age of 62,
Right.
they would ordinarily would have had that 600 weeks qualifying. Now, it means that that person who is 62 would have been working far longer, would have been working before. So, in short, the minimum requirement for one to access a benefit from Social Security by way of a pension is 500 weeks contribution. That 500 weeks contribution, having attained the age of 60, entitles you to a reduced benefit. So you will get a pension, it just will not be a full
Right.
pension. You're guaranteed a 25% replacement. That 25% replacement, right, is what your pension would be. Now, if you had waited or even worked longer,
2 more
what would have
years.
been
Yeah.
35 could very well be
Because you have additional
early age
contribution
reductions.
weeks
Could be even reach as much as 40
as 40. So the
Right.
key is
to
to
continue,
continue working and contributing to
Yes.
Social Security. There are times when 2 persons might have the same number of contribution weeks, but by virtue of their salary being different,
Yes,
the Social Security
Security.
payment,
yes, would be different.
if all factors are not equal,
Then you
then
can't get equal.
you can't get equal.
No.
This is a question that bothers me. It makes me very uneasy. But I have to ask it. When someone accepts an early age pension, it's permanent until death?
Until death.
Why is it can't be that when I would have, let's say, caught up to the pension age, then automatically I begin to receive the pension that was due to me before I accepted the early age pension? So in other words, the 12% is now replaced and I'm getting a higher rate of payout.
That could only occur if one was continuing to work. You would have already exited the system. So at the point that you made your application for your pension, you're no longer required to make contributions to Social Security. Therefore, you get the benefit that is legally due to you at that point in time.
Do you know that there are some persons who are of the view that it's a temporary fix? And
What
when
is?
they would have attained the age of the pensionable age, that it levels out and they automatically receive the pension payment.
I have to tell you, I am aware that there are persons who do perceive that that is what is the case, and it is our job to inform them and to advise and to educate that indeed it is not.
It's like a marriage till death do us part.
But however, once you make a decision to leave that marriage, which is what you would do by making an application early,
Yeah.
right? That is now, you're now divorced, right? Or you're now separated at that juncture. So the benefit, that additional benefit that you were planning for, is no longer there for you, which is why the recommendation that I have tended to make as late as today and as early as last week is to say to persons, work if you are physically, emotionally, and mentally able to continue to work.
How does early age pension affect short-term benefits like sickness and maternity benefits?
It affects them to this extent that how the regulations currently read, and we're seeking to amend them. Let me add that quickly before there's the stoning from the audience. But currently the regulations will speak to the fact that one would ordinarily have to be working between the ages of 16 and 60. So sickness, invalidity, and those things expect that at 60, work would have ended.
Okay.
Right? Because you're now working longer, or being able to work longer, we now have to amend regulations to reflect that one would work beyond 60. Now, if one took an
Because
early
sickness
pension,
benefits, you receive them up to age 59?
we receive them up to age 60. But
Okay.
as it stands now,
Okay.
you could work beyond, you are capable to work beyond 60. It means that if you do take an early pension, that means you have chosen to exit the workforce.
So you're
That
no longer
means you're no
covered.
longer covered for sickness benefit. And it would be very unusual to have a woman being pregnant at 60.
Since we're speaking about maternity, there are a number of infertile ladies adopting newborn babies. Maternity benefits.
They wouldn't be entitled to maternity benefit.
Why?
They
You
didn't.
have to take care of the baby.
They have to take care of the baby, but they would not have carried the baby to confinement.
Also, the benefits.
The benefit will go to the birth mother, if any.
But I'm taking care of the baby.
Yes. But it's not, you have adopted
So
the
I
child.
need to take, it's a newborn baby. I need the 6 weeks to settle the baby to do exactly what the biological mother would do. She's free, single, and disengaged now, and I'm stuck with this child. You don't consider that to be a huge responsibility?
I do consider it to be a huge responsibility.
But not huge enough to compensate me.
I wouldn't be compensating
Because
you
there are persons who've contributed for many, many years, decades, but because they can't produce a child, all that money is accumulating in the Antigua and Barbuda Social Security, and you're saying that with this newborn baby, they can't even get a percentage of that?
Correct. Remember, there's no doctor that says that they were ever pregnant. The doctor would not have said that they're pregnant. They would not have a record that they would have carried a baby to term, that the baby was born.
Couldn't that be included in the legislation?
It could be, but I have...
Would you consider?
No.
At 55 and your spouse dies, you receive benefits
Yes.
for the rest of your lifetime.
Yes. Unless you remarry, cohabit.
I'm not even saying all that. But let's just say I'm not doing all that. I'm remaining chaste until death. How does the movement of the pensionable age impacts the surviving spouse?
It means the age would also have to graduate as well. It currently...
It's at 55 now.
Yeah, it will be graduating. It will have to graduate. It means that a person could only be entitled to that survivor's benefit
for a lifetime at 60?
Having attained a particular age. I wouldn't say 60.
You're looking at that too?
It has to move as well.
I know, so that is something that you're considering. It's under consideration.
It's under amendment currently. So once all, all of the things that would need to be amended to bring parity to Social Security system, inclusive of moving the age requirement for qualification for the survivor's benefit, eligibility for sickness,
invalidity,
and the like. Those age requirements have to be graduated, just as is the age pension.
How soon?
We're working on that currently.
No timeline? You don't want to commit to a timeline? 6 months, 8 months, a year?
Before the end of this year.
Well, give me something with which to work before the end of this year. I like that. So by 2020, we'll be set. I really thank you for coming to the Paula Show and speaking clearly about these matters because I understand them better. I'm not saying that I agree.
I know you don't.
Oh, you know I don't agree. But I don't agree with all the instances, but I do understand. Okay, there are people working in different jurisdictions. We're talking now about the reciprocal agreement.
Yes.
How, therefore, does this early age retirement affect the
Those
reciprocal agreements?
Where they do not have in Antigua the 600 contribution weeks, but they have contribution weeks outside of Antigua in another CARICOM territory, you would add their contribution weeks together to come up and they would qualify in Antigua on a totalized basis.
Of all the jurisdiction where
so
they
you
would
have
worked.
550 in Antigua, but you have 200 in Barbados,
That's
for example.
750.
That's 750, which gives you the requirement for Antigua for you to get a benefit.
So you would automatically
You
receive
pay
the pension
You
in
receive
Antigua.
a pension in Antigua, but Antigua would pay you their proportion of that 750, which is you would only work out what that 550 weeks contribution
And
would
Barbados
be
is required
when
to pay you for the 250.
remaining 200.
The payment would be made from
Barbados,
Barbados as
yes.
opposed to Antigua paying the total sum and
If there
Barbados reimbursing
if there was a
you.
bilateral arrangement between Barbados and Antigua and Barbuda, then we could pay on behalf of Barbados and
And then
Barbados refunds.
yeah.
But we don't have a bilateral arrangement with them.
So it's not complicated.
No.
It's not complicated.
Pensions are very, very straightforward. Sometimes I think I'm the one that makes it complicated.
So why you need all these actuaries and all these people then? It
You need the
sounds
actuaries because the actuaries are going to tell you when you're likely to die, statistically.
actuaries
Right?
are God. Okay, go ahead.
No, they're not God, but they can look at how you live
Trends,
and determine, given your economy, given the state of health, given the number of persons,
alcohol use. And
all of those things, this is when you're likely to keel over and die. So they identify for Social Security what is the inherent risk in the persons who are working, which gives you a better idea as to how to plan for future income, because that's what you're really...
Some of your workforce will definitely die.
They are going to die. So the reality is to plan for the financial sustainability.
The inevitable.
So it is to plan for how long persons are going to contribute, and more importantly, to plan how short they should be benefiting.
All right, Mr. Matthias, we're wrapping up the Paula Show tonight, and I know you usually have final comments to my audience and the watching audience.
Final comments are very simple. Yes, there's a reduced benefit. Yes, Social Security continues to graduate at age. The reality, as long as one is physically, emotionally, and mentally able to work, one should continue working. It redounds to your benefit, right? Not only your pocket, but the pocket of your neighbor, and to the sustainability of Social Security. Always remember, there's no justice without Social Security.
Mr. Matthias, I always know it comes back to the contributions with you. Thank you for coming to the Paula Show. It's a pleasure having you once more. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for watching the Paula Show tonight. My guest has been the Director of the Antigua and Barbuda Social Security Board, Mr. David Matthias. Have a good evening. Goodbye.